Hello, hello, hello. What is happening? Um, all right. We are here. It is a hectic morning for me. It's a holiday in Taiwan, and so my kids are home. Um, so I wanted to talk about Quaith. Now, the thing about Quaith and and here Degusta mentions that she's kind of a plot device. She is at the moment a plot device, but it's like kind of a plot device that needs to eventually come around to be something, like I'm not sure if George really knows, but and I think a lot of people focus on Quaith's identity, but you know on who she is, and doesn't even matter who she is, but like is she Shira Sea Star? Is she a Shara Dane? Like who, But then the question, like, few people actually ask the thing beyond it, which is like, what the hell does she want? Like, what does she want? She seems to want to make Danny hatch her dragon eggs. Like, if we're assuming that all of the stars that were whispering to her were Quaith in a Game of Thrones, that she wants to hatch dragons, and she seems to want to know who Danny wants Danny to know who she is, but at the same time, like she just won't just tell her who she is. Like, why doesn't she just like say, "Hey, Danny, let's remember who you are." Like, this is the point. Like, there's some others north of the wall. You need to bring your dragons and kill those things. It's the end of the world. Like, why isn't she direct? Why does she have to be also all cryptic constantly? Um, the that's the that sort of thing. I'll get back to this. We haven't released the first chapter of your book. I'll get back to talking about this in a second. I just want to talk a little bit about Quaith. Is Quaith a divorcee? But that's the thing, is like like, is she attached to any man? Does she need to be attached to any man? Is she attached to any cause? Like, because there's no information on it. You just kind of assume that she's part of some sort of grand scheme of somebody else, like time traveling Bran or something. But um it is kind of funny that, like, there's as people talk about the identity so much, very few people kind of say, like, well, what exactly does she want? Like, why does she want dragons back? What's the point, and why be cryptic? um and somebody else was asking about masks, like, what's the point of the mask? um and I was thinking about the masks. um Somebody asked, oh yeah, Morna White Mask is the wildling version of Quaith. What's the magical function of a mask? And so we have this Morna White Mask, and then we have the Archmaesters of the Citadel have masks as well, and then we have Quaith, and it's like, why wear the mask? Like, what's the point of wearing the mask? Is it something with the glass candles? Like, you put the mask on, and you don't want to get sunburned by the glass candle or something, because you're going to be sitting in front of it for too long. But you'd need to protect your eyes. Like, your eyes are going to get sunburned. Um, and so, I was sort of like putting it out there on just, people's ideas. Like, does anyone have any ideas on what on earth, like, you know, she would want? She would, you know, um, no way to know the agenda. This is the problem. Like, 5 books in, and there's not even an inkling of who she is, and what she wants. Are Quaith and Pyatt pre-antagonistic towards each other? The That's the other odd thing, is that the Clash of Kings begins with a sort of coordination where three people are sent out to treat with Danny. Pyatt Pre, um, uh, Quaith, and Zaro. And so you'd think that like somehow the citizens of Karth or the powers that be in Karth got together and they're like, oh crap, we got to go talk to Danny. Who are we going to send? And then they picked those three assholes. Like, why? Like, why would the Seven or the Spicers Guild or all of these people or the Tourmaline Brotherhood, like, they all chose a representative, you know? And I think in my old videos on it, I was like, there must be like three factions. There must be like a faction that's like pro Danny, a faction that's anti Danny, and then a faction that's like, let's just push Danny and have her move on her way. You know, like we don't want to kill her, we don't want to support her, but let's just move her on. So I kind of thought that there were three factions, and that somehow all the people of Karth got together and chose various representatives. And what, but but even assuming that they did choose three factions and chose different representatives, I can kind of understand Zaro being a person that they would choose. I can even understand why Pyat Pri would be a person that they would choose. These are like big figures in the city. Like they have functions. Like they're leaders. Who the hell is Quaith? Like who the hell is Quaith? Like what does she lead? Why are they picking her as a representative? Like what's her function? Like is she part of it? Is she part of the Tourmaline Brotherhood? Is she part of the guild? Like is there any reason that they would send her? Is she rich? Like does she have a manse? like what does she have her own house of the undying? Like why are they sending her? Like um masks, what's the deal with that? Doesn't everyone in Asshai walk around wearing masks? Yeah, I don't know. What was the whole thing on in World of Ice and Fire? Like, there's, see, the only thing we know about Asshai is really what was printed in the World of Ice and Fire. Um, and let's see if there's anything on masks in that. Um, I don't see anything. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Here we go. The most sinister of sorcerers of Asshai are the Shadowbinders, whose lacquered masks hide their faces from the eyes of gods and men. They alone dare to go upriver, past the walls of Asshai to the heart of darkness. That's what we know. So I guess the lacquered mask is just part of being a Shadowbinder. Hides their face from gods and men. Maybe it's religious. Who knows? Yeah, it just seems to be a Shadowbinder thing. Um, everyone asks who Quaith is, but never how Quaith is. Well, I mean, I think she has a glass candle. I think that's just like the with no explanation right now. We're just gonna say that she has a glass candle. I mean, either that or she has a werewood, or maybe those black trees that that grow around the House of the Undying and or something. But you know, but yeah, it might just be a religious concept, nuclear fallout. But I mean, because to hide the scarring, the high radiation scars, or to like protect from radiation. But why wouldn't you protect your eyes? Or maybe the eyes. Maybe there's like little glass things over the eyes, and we can't actually see like the mask actually like is full protection from like radiation blasting in one's face. Like you're trying to use a glass candle, so you put on like essentially it's a it's a welder mask. Yeah, it's just like it's just a welder mask that she puts on to protect herself from. Is there anything that says that her eyes are exposed? Because maybe there's actually like glass like protecting her eyes to just the massive radiation blasts that are. All right, I think we're getting to the bottom of this. Yeah, yeah. I'm a shy anti-masker. I mean, you don't want that radiation like blasting into your face, like. Maybe the masks because magic sacrifice and masks make them ugly. Now I'm thinking of the. Did I tell you guys about? I'm sure I've talked about this before. That uh, her eyes are described really. I've talked about before about there's this horrible um, episode of the Twilight Zone that really like I saw it when I was little and I it really affected me. It like scarred me. I like and anytime I saw something scary, I'd remember that episode because I was like too young and like. But it was essentially like this grandpa like really fucking hates his family and thinks his family are a bunch of dicks, so he has them wear masks and they all wear masks and then he dies and they take off their masks and they're like finally our grandpa's dead and their faces are all like deformed and you're like who the fuck would do that to their family? What an asshole! Like it was just like the horrible, so like it's just a dumb episode, and it's like people remember. Apparently, I'm not the only one because I've like Googled it, and apparently, like lots of people were scarred. Like what a horrible episode this was. Um, her eyes are visible behind the mask, wet and shiny. Ugh, I guess they're not. I guess it's not like a welder mask. It's fucking. I mean, wet and shiny. Maybe she's got special contact lenses or there's glass back there. I don't know. I don't know. All right, let me address some of these things. Okay. Will you ever release the first chapter of your book? My book is done. It's just it's being edited. It's about half edited. Um and then I have to figure out the whole publishing thing. Um, but it'll be released. It'll be released eventually. Of course, it's a weird thing with writing is that like it's been so long. Keep in mind, I like started this book like more than a decade ago, like the idea and everything, and you just kind of get to the point with writing where even if you don't even if it's not bad, you just start hating it for some reason. Like I'm just like, oh god, like it's just been lingering so long. Like I felt this even with like sample chapters that I work on for a long time. Is that like I'm just like like you eventually stare at it long enough and you're just like I hate this, and then you publish it and post it and people are like oh this is incredible and you're like oh that's really great to hear because like I've grown from staring at it long enough to hate it. So it's this weird thing. There's some emotional connection. I've read other writers talk about this that they just they end up hating their own writing because you end up staring in front of it for too long. But the Dreams of Ghosts and Indians like it's a real thing. It's a real book. It just needs to um, have some editing finished and then work on publishing it. It's not long. It's not a long book. It's only like 80,000 words. It's only 8 chapters, but and I think even in the decade since I started it, like a lot of the ideas, like the rest of the world has like put in their stuff. So like now it's not even a very original concept anymore. I don't know. So it's how I feel about it. Um, I've an irrational love for the 1995 film Heat. Being a 90s movie fan, what are your thoughts on it? Why is it the greatest film ever made? I've only seen bits and pieces of Heat. Heat was like the one where everyone was like excited about Pacino and De Niro finally having a scene together or something, but I never got around to seeing it. Um, I don't know why. I don't know why. Even though like a lot of gangster movies, and I'm assuming it's like a cop gangster movie, I'm not sure, but like, even though I tend to enjoy a lot of them I see, I've never been like super into them. Like I really liked Goodfellas, you know. It's like, and I'm fine. I like Godfather, and Godfather 2, and things like that, you know. But and maybe I'm mischaracterizing the movie because maybe it's all about cops and not really about gangsters. I don't know, but like I just assume because it's Pacino and De Niro. um, but like for some reason I just haven't had the interest in like seeing movies like that. I never had like wanted to see Casino or anything like that. It's just I don't know what it is. Scarface like never really interested me. I've seen bits of Scarface. I don't know why. Quaith is a Karen. That'd be very funny. Like she's actually like she, she's like, why is there this teenage girl hanging around our city? We need to do something about this. I'm gonna call the Tourmaline Brotherhood. I'm gonna call the Warlocks unless you get out of here. Who assassinated the Spicers in the prologue? You're gonna have to keep reading. You're gonna have to keep reading. Okay. It's I know he's thought of it because of the sorrowful man from Karth, but it's gonna happen. Um Rob's will. Rob ordered Kat and John to marry. Kat legally a Stark by marriage and John a Stark by blood. The kids would be Starks. Problem solved. um Trying to think of like I don't know if it's really solves the fundamental problem of John leaving the Night's Watch and him being a bastard. Oh, I guess he legitimizes him, right? But what's weird is even after legitimization, people in the North are like, nah, he's still a bastard. Like with Ramsay, like no one seemed to care. They're like, oh, he got legitimized. Yeah, don't care. He's still a bastard. And yet, everybody, yet when it's Jon Snow, everyone's like, Jon Snow, he's going to ride the dragon and save the world, and everyone will unite behind him. It's like, how come Ramsay's still a bastard? Like, you know. So I mean, it's the same with Daemon Blackfire. Like, he got legitimized, and everyone still called him a bastard. Bloodraven, people still called him a bastard. Like, it didn't really matter when they legitimized him. People were still dicks. And there was a whole thing in the Sworn Sword about that, where the Faith of the Seven teaches that people that are bastards are fundamentally on like a blood genetics level like ruined because their parents had hot sex. And this is legitimately the reason given that if your parents have hot sex, you're gonna have like a bad temperament. While if you have like dutiful, like, you know, boring sex, then you're gonna come out like a dutiful, like, law-abiding citizen. And I mean, this is in the Sworn Sword. So I don't know if like John getting it on with Catelyn, as much as we'd all love to see that. Yeah, he's still only like 16 years old. Okay, so let's not. It's kind of gross to think about. Okay, but I know we all think of Kit Harington, but like, Jon Snow is still a child. Um, he's um I don't know if it really removes like, it's just like, oh, Catelyn's running the North now with a bastard like who abandoned the Night's Watch. Jeez. uh uh um Preston, do you think Jon Snow's show or Dunk and Egg show will happen? I do think that there's a good chance they will. It's right now, it's just that HBO is being really weird and really odd and stingy with their money. But I think if in the next like year or couple years, um, uh, you know, a lot has to do with like, if House of the Dragon does really well and all of the other shows on HBO seem to tank, um, what else do they have? Kind of situation, you know. Well, they may be waiting for, that's a long time. I mean, it's like a year away from House of the Dragon season 2, but they may be waiting for something like that, a whole year. But I think it all just depends on like money and finances and where the company is at the moment. Um, I think Though I think both of them have a good shot. I understand that they've both been put on ice right now, but I think it's a real possibility. But I think it has to do with money and whether they can get things in order. Um, and man, everything's kind of screwed up with HBO right now. So which is I mean it seems silly to me, like they're 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 kind of killing the goose that laid the golden egg, by Carmine's like Quaith's Mandalorian. She dares not to go against the way. Carmine and I did this podcast about with the Mandalorian, and every time we do it, I start going on this like long rant. Carmen's gonna tell me like to shut up because I'm gonna like spoil all the material, but it's just like I'm getting to hate the Mandalorian at this point because their religion is so stupid, and I just rant. I just go on a rant like all day long on how they believe in nothing. They worship a big mask, and that's it. They worship a big helmet. I watched that Twilight Zone episode with my grandpa. Shit freaked me out. Yeah, Masks is a horrible episode. What actually, now as I've gotten older, um, I'm really quite critical of it in the sense like what's the point of it? How does it tell me about the human condition? It's just mean. It's just a mean spirited like episode where where bad people are tortured. I don't learn anything. Am I supposed to, it's kind of very simplistically like written where you're supposed to be like, yes, they deserved it. They all deserve to have their faces deformed because one of them tortured dogs or something, and like, and the grandpa, he was good to do that to his own family. What a weirdo, like it's really poorly written. It tells you nothing about the human condition. It's a mean episode. It's there just to like shock people. It's like the movie Hannibal with people eating brains. Like there's nothing to it except that it's body horror. It's just body horror episode. Which I've never been a fan of body horror. I mean, sorry, just joined, but surely it's to stop people fighting you with other glass candles. Like, oh, like to find someone, how do you know what they look like? That's a really good idea. That's a really good idea. That if you're floating around the ether with a mask on and people are like, oh crap, who's we got to take that person out because that person's been visiting my dreams. Like the dream is like if you're having a dream and all of a sudden like Cersei's face is there. I'm like, got to take out Cersei. She's got a glass candle, or Euron's face is in there. But if you're wearing the mask, no one knows who you are, so you can't like take you out in real life. That's a really good idea. I think that's I that might beat out the radiation. It's a little more logical than the radiation. I mean, the radiation idea is pretty good, but but this is like to just keep your anonymity, because if you're going to be torturing people and like affecting their dreams and manipulating their thoughts, you don't want people to know where you live. You don't want to be swatted. Is George R. R. Martin a victim of is Quaith just a victim of George pruning his garden? George doesn't prune shit, man. Quaith isn't pruned. Quaith appears in A Dance with Dragons, so she's not pruned. She's I don't know if George has ever pruned. I mean, besides Al Ardim and the religious zealots from A Clash of Kings, like he doesn't prune very much. Even stuff like you'd think you're done with, like Simon the Singer getting put in the stew, like coming back in A Dance with Dragons as a mention and a parallel to Bran like eating a cannibalized stew. Like I'm like, I'm sure you didn't plan that, George, but it's pretty genius that you like came up with the parallel later, like, and used this like completely irrelevant, useless tale, like useless filler from A Clash of Kings. Like Simon, like all of a sudden coming in and like harassing Tyrion and wanting to be part of the wedding because he found out about about their affair and Tyrion ordering that the guy be murdered and thrown into stew has no effect on anything. It has no effect on the plot whatsoever. It is just filler. I mean, maybe it tells us the type of person that Tyrion's becoming, but like, it's useless little story, useless little side adventure. And then he somehow brings it back, like, I planned it the whole time. It was to parallel Bran eating his cannibal stew. I'm halfway through Name of the Wind and just found out that the series is incomplete. Any recommendations for a series that isn't indefinitely delayed? So, Name of the Wind is this is part of the King Killer's Chronicles. Hold on, let me. I have. Hold on, I gotta find my. Here we go. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Let me put on my headphones so that I am not creating any echoes. There we go. Okay. Now.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Great.
How's it going?
Good. John 2 was tough, but I'm glad it's out.
This is Taylor. Taylor is on. Taylor, the editor, is here joining us. John 2, like word for word, it was just so difficult. So difficult.
Yeah.
And I chalk it up to like, I think of myself as a writer, and I think I'm pretty good at writing dialogue. But when you have almost no dialogue, and it's just like poetic description of like battle that goes on and on and on, and I'm just like, oh God, like it's just like you go at like a snail's pace, like every sentence, like, oh, what's gonna happen next? How much more can I describe like blood and battle? And it was so hard. It was so hard.
Yeah, the other reason it's hard is like it's not pleasant to write about, for me anyway, to like come up with gore and horror. It's just not what I normally do.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to do that as well as George does. I'm like really appreciating his talent for horror and like shock and tragedy, which we have to include. It wouldn't be like the books without it.
Yeah, like when we had the part where John Con yells to Balak or Balak is like, find a face, and they run up point blank range and like shoot arrows like piercing into people's like eyes and brains. Like I was like, okay, that's very George. Like, okay, that's brutal. That's like two sentences. Like, you're like, fuck, what? Like, that's it. Like, what more can we? How much more? Oh God, let's keep going. It's really hard, and I felt like, so we had those flashbacks, and I know that like the editors were like, these flashbacks are a little disrupting, and they were, and it's like we could like have these later, and I'm like, but if we don't have them, like the chapter doesn't have anything. Like I almost felt like the flashbacks were there to kill time, because it was so hard to like do the battle.
No, I completely get that. I thought the same thing. Like, wow, if this flashback gets taken out, that would be like, I don't know, a fifth of the chapter or something. Right. But I actually, it's not something that really bothers me. I think a short chapter is okay, even if it's really short. And that's just because like the short chapters and short stories in general, you need every word to be really impactful, and being in the right place too is important.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, so the chapter came out to like 3,500, 3,600 words. That's still like 1,000 more words than some of the Battle of the Blackwater chapters, which are like 2,500, like really short things. And so like I know people like read it and they're like, oh, this seems like it was really short. And I was like, it was, but it's actually par for the course for like battles. The battles are, chopped up like that. But man, oh man. I mean, I liked how it turned out. I was just like, I just couldn't believe like in the end, like it had taken so long. It took so long to put it together. It took so long with the editors. Like it just every piece, it was just a snail. Like oh god, like grinding it out, grinding out. It felt like George trying to grind out the Winds of Winter on that one.
Well, it had to be done. What else could we do? It was
Right.
set up. We had to get Storm's End, and having the elephants was pretty awesome. I tried doing some mid-journey images of like people running off a cliff, and I don't know, I got some weird results. So probably not before you come up with your going over John 2 video, but I don't know. Mid-journey is like, I like having like art that can go with the chapters, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I was very surprised at the at the Ariane one that you had of Ariane on the prow of the ship, like looking at the
Daddy, we can't have the tablets.
No, not right now, little guy.
Why?
No, well, maybe later. Maybe later. Hey.
Is it now not close to bedtime, or is it close to bedtime?
No, it's the morning, little guy. It's not close to bedtime.
Is it the afternoon?
No, it's the morning.
Why is it not noon?
It'll be noon in like a couple hours.
How many more hours?
In 2 hours. In 2 hours, Sky.
What's an hour?
An hour 60 minutes. Oh no. Okay, tangled up. Okay. All right, Sky. Okay, Sky, come on. Hold on just a second. All right.
Okay.
Sky, come on. I'm playing with Rosa for just a little bit. Okay.
Daddy.
Oh my god,
I
post
know.
Scott.
I just need a little bit of time. I'll be out in a second, okay? I'll be out in a little
Daddy,
bit.
can I have
Oh.
cereal?
I mean,
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
dance,
yeah.
but
Anything you want.
I think he's coming right back.
Okay. Oh, sorry about that. It is
No problem.
that's also like just like toddler mentality of like every question like what's an hour? You know what an hour is. Like it's 60 minutes. What's a minute? Like
But what is it really? I know, and eventually it gets to the point that you're like, wait, I don't even know why I know what I know anymore.
Yeah, I was recently watching a thing on like a video on like the universe and the heat death and things like this and some scientist was like he was a real snippy guy and he was like people with religion they always say things like oh science will explain how but religion tells us why and he's like why is a stupid question. Like anyone with a toddler knows that why is a stupid question. Like what the answer is because go to bed. Like but the assumption of purpose. The assumption of purpose with everything. And so like when you're talking with the toddler like it's like I'm at the park the other day and there's like 5 stools and he's like Daddy how many stools are there? I was like there's 5. Why? Like, they're just 5.
Why not?
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess we do this the same sort of thing with like overanalyzing George and stuff where like every line we're like, well, why did George write that line? Like what was his purpose? And at some point he just sometimes just wrote something. Like there's not necessarily always a purpose to it, but
Oh my god, I kind of want to wade into this Viserys thing, but I think I'm gonna regret it.
Oh no! What did you say?
No. That line about that Viserys says, thinking about multiple interpretations, that sort of thing. You know what I'm talking about?
No, you'll have to remind me.
Oh, okay, because Carmine put a video out recently of you watching Hot D, and that line where Viserys says, I never imagined I would
Oh, right.
be married again. Yeah.
People get so angry
For
at
those of
me.
you who are blissfully unaware, that was a controversy.
Yeah, apparently, yeah. So what in the third episode of Hot D, Viserys is around the fire and he's drunk and he's like I never imagined I'd remarry because he's seen a prophecy that shows his like boy on the Iron Throne, and he's just like, oh, I never thought I'd remarry. And it's like you like, to me, I'm like, you fucking idiot. Like, what? Like, how did you never think about this? And then other people.
I mean, yeah.
He's drunk. He's drunk. It's fine. He's drunk.
I mean, I have this problem that I love to psychoanalyze fictional characters. So I came up with like all these possible interpretations. Like maybe he's lying to himself. Maybe he's like lying to other people. He wants to flatter his new potential wife and like not diss his dead wife. And like maybe his feelings have changed over time. Like maybe at one point he literally couldn't have imagined it because he wouldn't have let himself do it. And now Allison is there, very young and very pretty, and he's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe getting married wouldn't be so bad. So yeah, I mean, it is contradictory if you think about it purely like logically, because I don't think it is logical, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we see in fiction that are not logical. Like even though it's a very beautiful plot point that Viserys spends his entire life like thinking about Emma Arryn, and like 20 years go by and he's still like hung up on Emma Arryn and still thinking about her. Like that's all very beautiful and everything, and it makes a great story. Not realistic. Like people don't get hung up on people for 20 years. Like the human body and the human mind is resilient. It has to move on. And like I get it. It's a very beautiful story, but in reality, like, think about all the complexes we have in our life. Like how many of them like really last 20 years? Some of them last a year. Some of them last 5 years. But I don't know about 20. Like, that he never gets around to like, loving Alicent, and like he's still on his deathbed. He's still thinking about Emma Arryn. Like, yeah, no, I mean, really sweet.
Oh, well, like if I'm gonna like nerd out, dementia, when dementia happens, which seemed to be happening, people lose their earliest memories first. So actually that makes a lot of sense that he would possibly be going back in time in a way. So
that's fair enough if it's dementia. I'm trying to think
like being hung up on someone for that long is weird, but I don't know, I guess the guilt can really factor into it and be like, he doesn't want to kill another woman.
Yeah. Though, I mean, his body breaking down was like the metaphor that he was like constantly thinking about her the whole time, but it's fine. It's like I say, I think it's the best part of season 1 is Viserys and his character. But, is it real life? I mean, there's a lot of things that aren't real life. Is it realistic that like Sam would run into Arya? Of all the people that he's going to run into in Bravos, is he going to run into her? Probably not. But,
it's fate.
It's fate. Right.
It's time traveling Brad.
It's time traveling Brad manipulating everything. Or in Star Wars, how all the characters, like, a quadrillion people in the galaxy, and yet like the same like batch of 30 keep running into each other in space, but
right.
Oh.
There was this funny bit in John 2 that your comment actually made me laugh, because I made a suggestion that was kind of, in hindsight, terrible, and it was like about elephants, and I was trying to simplify the language because I was trying to streamline the sentences, like cut out as many words as possible. And to get the elephants angry, they get them drunk, and like cut their legs.
Yeah.
And there's this line like about the big elephant in the center being calm, like appearing stable, without the cuts on its legs. And I was like, that's a lot of words. Like, could we shorten that some way? And I just wrote uncut, just suggest that. I'm like, it's kind of a weird word. Doesn't show up in the novels. Like, sure, it shows up about hair and that sort of thing. And at first it's like, this sounds like John is fixated on this giant uncircumcised elephant dick. And I was like, oh my God, you're absolutely right.
The elephant came in uncut.
Like, I couldn't believe I missed it.
I was just because the first thing I thought of was the South Park movie, and like do you remember what was called Bigger, Longer, and Uncut? So when the South Park movie came out, they originally wanted to call it All Hell Breaks Loose, and the censors told them you can't put hell in a title or something, and they're like, fine, we're gonna call it South Park Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. And which is way more vulgar, and it passed the censors, but still, like, this idea of like uncut, like I mean, it's a very American perspective, but because we're the ones that are circumcised, but like the and the Middle East, but but just the word uncut, and so like this idea, like, and then the elephant came in and he's like uncut, and I was like, oh God.
Yeah. So that's why it's good to have multiple people reading over your work and like double checking each other.
Or else we'll end up with fat pink mast in there, right? No.
I mean, that was on purpose. This was unintentional.
Right, but no one's going to stand up. Who's going to stand up to George and say, I mean, he has an editor, but like who stands up to him and is like, nah, this line, not so much,
I don't know. I mean, it's up to the writer to like take this suggestion or not. So maybe someone did tell him this is fucking weird. And he's like, yeah, I know. Isn't it great?
Yeah. So there was, and I'll talk about this a lot more when I do the going over. But there was a lot of like, somebody sent me a documentary on elephant warfare. And I like watched this BBC documentary on elephant warfare, and I was like, "Oh God, okay." And so a lot of like the getting drunk, having elephants drunk and cutting their legs was like a real thing, and how like they cannot really be used for organized warfare. That they're there just to panic people. That's all like straight legit. The Swiss pike squares, like I watched another documentary on like pike squares, and I was like, oh, there really was a moment in history where cavalry became useless because the invention of this infantry strategy called the Swiss pike square. And I was like, oh, so John Con is like doing that. So there's a lot of neat things like that we're able to include in the whole thing. But
I think the action is good. I think there was, enough action. It was some parts at the end were a little vague, I guess, but maybe that's on purpose, like not spelling everything out exactly.
Yeah. I think a lot of people weren't really sure what happened, which is, it's funny because it's like I went back so many times and like tried to make things clearer, but in the end, like George keeps things very ambiguous, so I suppose it's not in his style, but yeah, it's just in the end they fall off the cliff. But the idea is that there's like I'm gonna have to like mirror this But like, the line is like that, and then the cliff is kind of to the west and the south, and all the beasts are down here, all the oxen, and so they flow down as a diversion, and then they get alerted to John Con's line, so they try to come up north. They fail. They're stuck down here, and then the elephants come in and panic them, and they all fall off the cliff to the south and the west. But who knows? Who knows if people got that?
Yeah, I mean, I read it several times, so I got it. And I listened to the outline beforehand, of course. So, like, someone reading it or listening to it for the first time would probably be a little bewildered. But I think it was pretty clear where people were, like, where all the different groups are located. And I don't know, maybe it wasn't. You all can, like, comment on the video. Because it's like a very new style of chapter that stood out from all the others.
Yeah. It was not as fun. It was not as fun to write. It was not as fun. I mean, I'm good. I'm glad that like people thought it was really thrilling to read. It was a lot of work. It was not like I'm trying to think, like the most fun chapter for me was probably, Hota 2, like talking to Darkstar and how fun that is, and just writing witty dialogue and how funny it is to have these two characters talking, and like going back to it is just like more enjoyable because you can just make the dialogue even wittier and more fun. And this was just a trudge, like going back and being like, oh God, how are we gonna make this work? But hopefully, I think Samwell's going to be very fun though. It's going to be a very, very fun chapter.
Yeah. I think it's going to be kind of like Elaine in that it's going to be really long.
It's going to be really long.
A bunch of plots going on, a bunch of people with secret identities bumping into each other.
It'll be kind of like two chapters because we've got the outer chapter and the inner chapter. And so like and so it's just going to be like writing two chapters at once. But I think the outer chapter is going to be the fun one, and make that as goofy and crazy as possible. Heisty, so we'll see how it goes.
There was one last thing I wanted to bring up about something you talked about the Cushing Library draft and glass candles. And with the fanfic, I've been going back through a lot of old analysis stuff. So I watched Radio Westeros's Melisandre video, which was like their third ever video from 8 years ago. It was really good. And it got me thinking about the similarities between the glass candles and Melisandre's ruby. And because you mentioned in the unpublished draft, the glass candle is supposed to grant eternal life.
Yeah.
Whoever's bound to it. And my perspective on Mel has changed from thinking that the ruby is like a part of a glamour to thinking that actually that's how she really looks, except maybe for her hair. And the ruby is just keeping her young and keeping her from dying. And then when she kind of binds Rattleshirt Mance with that ruby, the rubies are pulsing together. So the question is, like, who is Mel bound to? Where is that coming from? It's probably from, whatever temple she came from. But,
right, there's this whole question of, like, if Mance is bound to Mel, is Mel bound to someone else? And is there this, like, chain of subservience? We kind of get that same idea with like Bloodraven and the Children of the Forest, where like who is subservient to whom, in that werewood net. And I guess Jojen brings it up with the direwolves, right? Like, like is the wolf controlling you or are you controlling the wolf? And this ideas of people being like bound, collective consciousness, and like blended consciousness. Yeah, huh?
And I have the impression that she sort of sold her soul for eternal life, or not eternal, but living longer than natural.
Yeah, it's definitely George's intention, but at the same time, like I always have these little jokes in my head of like, because I'm always trying to figure out like how would it work if it weren't fantastical, and I'm like, you know, the line on Melisandre's age is that she has been practicing her arts for years beyond count, and so everybody's like, oh, she must be really old, and it's like, maybe she just can't count very high. Maybe she can only count like up to like 35. She's like 35 is, I don't know if there's this old comedy show called Mr. Show, and they're like 24 is the biggest number, and they're like, you're right, 24 is the biggest number, and they're all sitting around, and then finally one person's like, but what about 25? Oh, and they're like, oh my god, what about 25? 25's like Mel just can't count that high. She's or like
all a misunderstanding.
Right, or like, you know, it says that she doesn't sleep very much, and it's like maybe she actually is sleeping, but she just doesn't realize it. She like nods off constantly, and people are like, she's like narcoleptic, and she's nodding off constantly, but she thinks she's awake the whole time, you know, and all sorts of stuff. But you know, at some point it's hard to explain, and you have to have some sort of supernatural element to it. But yeah, who is she bound to? Who is sending her visions? And we kind of just think, I don't know. Without
so
any...
I'm going to reference the Radio Westeros video again.
Yeah.
Because Yolkboy has this theory that, maybe you've heard it, Melisandre is the child of Shiera and Bloodraven.
Yeah.
And that Shiera went to Leaf. So they kind of go on in the video like speculating maybe Shiera went to Leaf and Mel was somehow taken by the temple there.
Yeah, I guess it also calls back Danelle Lawston, right? Didn't she bathe in baths of blood in order to stay young? And the bathing in blood, like, you know, makes you think about the werewood, and the werewood keeps people alive for a long time. Bloodraven. It's like George mingles all of these ideas, but he doesn't necessarily have any sort of like clear, hard rules. Like, it's not like Brandon Sanderson where he has like very logical, magical systems, you know, like he kind of like blends these ideas and you're like not sure how they connect. Maybe he's not sure either. He's probably not sure either.
Yeah, maybe, well, right, like maybe the point of magic is that it can't be explained. I don't know if George thinks that. And I have a feeling that there's some dark shit about human sacrifice that, you know, ties all this together, like putting a soul into something. I like have this idea that is somehow necessary for maybe being bound to a glass candle or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I was like very happy that we eventually stumbled into the Golden Company being like the werewood net at the beginning. And that was like a slow evolution, but I'm like happy we got there. In this idea that when the previous Golden Company people died and their blood, it was like a blood sacrifice, and then they learned, and the Golden Company remembered, like the werewood, like that was like an evolution of ideas of like many of the editors like coming in and like building off of each other, and it got to a really cool, beautiful place in the end, like of that the Golden Company and Bittersteel is like a parallel to Bloodraven and the werewood net, and that like then remembering the Pike Square is similar to like somebody dying and blood sacrifice and going into the werewood and being remembered, you know. So that was cool that came out.
Yeah, like the power of information and knowledge and remembering.
Yeah. Oh man. So you're gonna write a chapter? You gonna write a chapter for Sam?
I mean, fuck, maybe I could write a scene.
You know, tell you the truth, like one really, really, really well written scene is much more useful than like a full like poorly written chapter. You know, like focusing on like one like paragraph or like one page is like and getting it like really down is like so much more valuable. You know, so. You know, if you can do that.
I'll say not likely. Maybe. I do like Sorella. She would be fun to write.
Yeah, and I'm not really sure. We haven't really like got into the their personality. I don't know.
Right, like
I don't know what pronoun to use for.
Well, I don't know. Sorry for misgendering you, Sorella. No, not to like make light of gender or anything, because like all genders are valid, of course, and whatever Aleros is doing is fantastic.
Right. Language is invented and is supposed to describe the world around us, and you know, if language fails, then we have to adjust the language and stuff like that. So we don't know what she's doing. Sorella. She's a funny one.
Yeah, but I guess we have to decide what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't think George. I mean, this is all written before George was like, you know, George was progressive for the time, but like, you know, he certainly didn't think about, even though he does have one hermaphrodite character. You know, I don't think he was like thinking about trans issues or anything like that. You know.
Well, most people weren't thinking about
right.
trans issues. You know, they weren't being talked about.
Yeah, or like you know, non-binary. That's the thing, is even to be sitting here and having a conversation about like, well, you know, the pronoun thing is it's really like there's the trans issue and then there's the non-binary issue, and they're actually very, very different, you know, like so like yeah, right. No, I mean, but because like you can be just Emma Darcy, for example, she's just non-binary. So she doesn't want to transition. Yeah. She just doesn't identify with either man or woman. So you know, you're going to use a pronoun there, versus like a trans individual who like transitions from a he to a she or a she to a he. You know, so like you know we've got these like so pronouns like come up on two kind of different distinct issues in life right now, but which is fine, you know. Some people, you know,
I think like
think of themselves as neuter or think of themselves as asexual. These are very very common kind of concepts now, and
aromantic too. So
yeah,
you know, there are all these. It's good. I think we're talking about all these different perspectives, like remembering that there's so much variety in people and how we live our lives and what we actually experience. And way too often we just assume everyone else like experiences things the way we do.
Right. I follow Trey the Explainer on Twitter, and the other day he posted a very funny tweet where he says, is there a word for the disappointment you get when you see a really attractive twink, but then it turns out to be a woman? And I was like, oh. And I laughed so hard, like, because I think it certainly happened reverse, where you're like, as a heterosexual, I see somebody that I'm like, oh, that's really attractive. That's a really attractive woman, and then you're like, oh, that's not a woman. Oh, you know, and like, you know, like. But he has it the reverse, where it's like, oh, that's a very, but you know, we live in our I mean, the world's always been this way. I guess it's just that we've we haven't described it this way. You know, we everybody puts things in categories. I realize now because with my toddler, like they always ask children, like, "What's your favorite color?" Like, well, why do you have to have a favorite color? Like, why is that a thing? Like, why does one need to choose what one's favorite color is? And I remember being forced into it when I was young and being like, it's yellow, and then later changing my mind and being like, it's green. But it's kind of a silly thing, even like, wow, they're colors. Why do I need to have a favorite? Like,
Yeah, I can think of a really dumb example, like playing board games with my family, and half of us would be like, "Ooh, I want the blue one,"
right.
and then like someone would always want the green one. I don't know. Is it as simple as that? Like, you get the red thing, I get the blue thing.
Right, but this is, you know,
Or when
these
people are like, "Hey, what should I buy for your kid for Christmas? What's their favorite color?"
yeah. But even like, you know, when your toddler is like, even though toddlers are like, you know, completely, you know, they're a decade away from thinking about like romantic relationships. You still see like, oh, my son is playing with this girl, and he plays with this girl like all the time. All of a sudden, you're like, it's his girlfriend, and you're like, well, no, like it's just he's just playing with somebody. But like society kind of forces these roles on things. So I guess with Sorella, you know, she's doing her thing. She's having her fun. We're not going to categorize it quite yet. Maybe we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll figure it out.
I don't know. What scene should I write?
I mean, just
I'll
if you
listen
want,
to
if you want,
again,
if you want something short, just like focus on like one of the characters' like stories. You know, like whether it be Sorella, like and her trip into to the crag and like observing something. You know, something that's only, even if you only want something that's a couple paragraphs, like go for that. You know, and then. And then that's it. That's all you need. I mean, because each of those is like a tiny, tiny story, right? Like, oh, I went to the crag, and this is what I saw. I went to the Riverlands, and this is what I saw. And you get this tiny little story written, you know. And so it's very, very low commitment, very low commitment.
Low commitment is just what I need.
Exactly. All right.
I guess I'll let you get back to chatting and stuff.
All right. Sounds good.
But you know, be back for more philosophical debate about George Martin and his worldview. And I have ideas and questions. So many questions unanswered.
I mean, that's the great thing. It's just the whole thing is it's just an exercise in letting us think about things and flex our brain muscles and stuff like this. It's, you know, it's fun in the end. You know, everything we've talked about. It's just all very fun in the end. You know, it's an interesting, fun world we live in.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Sounds good.
Maybe I'll write a few sentences.
All right. Nice. All right. Thank you, Taylor, and I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
All righty. Okay. All righty. Where was I? Oh, congrats on John 2 French kiss. I think it meant chef's kiss, but this writes out all of the emojis, and so there probably should have been like a little chef, but then maybe it like meant like French chef or something. But like it's like congrats French kiss. Yeah. But it was probably chef's kiss. What if Brienne and Jaime get sent to the Vale to get Sansa with Blackfish as a guide by Stoneheart? Brienne enters the tourney as a mystery knight since Jaime has one hand and Blackfish is old. I think it would be really difficult to work that out timeline wise. Not that that's not interesting, but keep in mind that um, it starts snowing in the Riverlands in the last Jaime chapter of A Feast for Crows, and then he has one more chapter in A Dance with Dragons, and we kind of get like him being missing for a little bit, and things like that with right, and Cersei finding out about this before her trial, which are only days before the first day of winter, and we kind of know that Sansa is still in the autumn, um, and so it's close, but I think it would take a number of weeks for Jaime to get from Raventree Hall to the Gates of the Moon, um, in that time. And remember, people are like coming together for that tournament, and like the roads are slow, and it's snowing, and it's hard to travel. So even though that would certainly be fun, I just don't know if like you could get it in timeline wise. I mean, it would be um I would try to, try to think about it, just because we just hear that like in the Elaine Sample chapter that it's still autumn. Now granted, George edits stuff and stuff like that, um but yeah, I mean, as fun as it would be, but you know, Brienne is a mystery knight. Does Brienne? I don't know if Brienne knows how to. I mean, she would have to be in the melee. I don't know if she knows how to joust very well, or at least we haven't heard about her jousting. Um, um, let's see here. How about this for bold? Cat gets another chapter. Mel is a fire white. Maybe Danny. Now John now. However, maybe no more John chapters. So there's a lot of discussion. I think it was from the Admiral Kid did a video on how do you fit everything in the Winds of Winter. And he went, because there's 20 points of view, and how do you give each of them enough time to fit in a book that has 75 chapters, or so. And so like, would you really bring Cat back to have another perspective? Now I do think the way you fit 75 chapters in is you don't bring John back as a point of view. I think that's like straight up what you do. Like you just can't have it. And I think a lot of the, Tyrion gets cut back majorly. Danny gets cut back majorly. You're not giving him 10, 15 chapters. You're giving Danny 5 or 6. You're giving Tyrion 5 or 6. Like you're giving, you're not. That's the way you do it. But it is a serious problem. How do you fit in all of these perspectives? And even George is writing like, oh, it's going to be super long. Winds of Winter is going to be super long. But Cat gets another chapter would be, I mean, interesting. But I don't know. But I think no more John POVs. It's just the fact. Yeah, it's just the facts on the ground. Like you can't have this many point of views. Like you can't have John having 8 points of view, 6 points of view, and hope to have it all in one book. It just can't happen. What is the in-universe reason for the Night's Watch members wearing black? Wouldn't it make more strategic sense for them to be in white? Makes me think the original reason has to do with the pact between the first men and the others. So having black would be, of course, like horrible if you're like trying to be invisible walking in snow and all of that. And so there is some discussion about the color black when Jon in A Clash of Kings, when Jon is on with Qhorin Halfhand and them sticking out on the snow and stuff like that. It's not smart in a camouflage kind of sense. Now, that said, most of their fighting is not necessarily in areas with like snow everywhere and like, you know, this idea that it's just tundra and it's just like white tundra like in the show is not the book. Like the book, most of everything is woods. Like they're in dark woods. So you could maybe argue that, like, you know, they're traveling at night in dark woods, maybe wearing black would be pretty good. As long as there's not a bunch of reflecting snow on the ground. But if they're out like beneath the canopy of the pine trees and things like this, maybe there's not that much. So you could argue that like where most of the Rangers are actually going is not that bad to have black. That, you know, we just eliminate the show's idea that we're in Iceland on a glacier, because that's like not actually, like, even the Fist of the First Men is like surrounded by forest and only like the tip is kind of exposed. So I think it's something like that. But yeah, why wear black? I don't know. I mean, mourning. Would it have something to do with the others? I'm trying to sense of like, you know, what like thematic reason would they be wearing black? You know, but I can't think of too much. Like, you know, I think George just picked a color. Does Roose Bolton put you in the mind of Joshua York? I think definitely if you read Fever Dream. I'll tell you that it's really difficult to not read Fever Dream and think about the Theon chapters with Ramsay and Roose. Now, I don't know about Joshua York specifically. I would actually say that Roose Bolton and everybody, and that savagery reminds me more of Ramsay Snow. Like Fever Dream opens with them getting this like virgin bride girl and you know, bringing her in for like this feast, and it's just the creepiness of everything just kind of reminds you of like Ramsay Snow at Winterfell. And then later on there's just a lot of descriptions of things that I kind of get the same sense of again. Like when he starts describing New Orleans sounds a lot like Volantis. And you know, there's also little, like, there's this down at the microscopic level too. Like there's a reference to insurance being gambling, which is also something that Arya mentions. And you're just like, talking about insurance being gambling is a really, really weird way to describe something. And so the fact that like it appears in like 2 George R. Martin things like makes me think of it like that he had reviewed that. I think he had probably gotten some writer's block and decided to reread Fever Dream or something before writing A Dance with Dragons, because there's just a lot of weird similarities throughout A Dance with Dragons that go back to Fever Dream. Skin changing doesn't mean full duplex. Bran doesn't start sniffing crotches and marking territory. I don't think he poses in the werewood. I'm trying to think about that. About like the other way. Like we hear about Rickon becoming more and more wild. So I think this is in a sense like the wolf taking over the person, or John is definitely hulked out at various times. Now maybe the connection was on at that point, but I think there is definitely is a situation where when the two minds meld, I think George is kind of saying that like you're not sure who the dominant mind is, and one mind can definitely like bully the other one. You know, whether Bran and Hodor, Bran being the stronger mind in each of these situations. So I think there is a risk, like even with a glass candle or anything else, that this person thinks they think they're going in to change somebody's mind, and they get their own mind changed back as something that happens. I do think about. I guess that this comes up because I was thinking about Star Trek and Odo. Like the end of Deep Space Nine, Odo is just one drop of liquid in an ocean of his people, but the implication is that one drop can dominate, even if it's only one drop. We think about it in a negative sense. There's a saying I love to say is that they say a barrel of sewage and a thimble of wine is a barrel of sewage. A barrel of wine and a thimble of sewage is a barrel of sewage. It doesn't even if something's very small, like you can still overpower like something larger. So I think George is definitely like making that kind of connection with regards to like blended consciousness and what have you. Did Radio Westeros talk smack on Twitter about Preston? You don't have to comment on that. You can look you can look at yourself if you like. Everybody's talked smack about me at some point, Carmine. Come on. I'd have to hate everybody in the world. It was like a super hip thing to like talk smack about me for a while. So I mean, what you gonna do? Do you spell it gray or gray? I think George spells it Grey, but I think in my life I spell it Gray, right? Yeah. I think I do I think I personally do Gray, but in a Song of Ice and Fire they do Grey. But this has always been a random point of contention among people about like spelling. I just turned 40 and said to some colleague, "Oh, that's my favorite color, like the exact hue." And it got me wondering why. I mean it. Like it's a weird concept. It really is. Now, I do think that like why green became my favorite color is just that it was like my eyes are green, and so for a long time I wanted to bring out my eyes, and I started wearing green. But then I just started wearing blue all the time, and I had no explanation for it. Like all my clothes just kind of shifted to blue, and so I do shy away from certain colors. But like I never wear purple or pink or things like that. But like. I think like if one actually examined one's behavior and one's attraction to various colors, it was probably something very subconscious, and versus like if you ask somebody, "Oh, what's your favorite color?" "Oh, my favorite color is this." It's kind of like people talk about their favorite movie. "Oh, my favorite movie is this." But what movie do you really watch over and over again? They're probably two different movies. Walder and Roose are not necessarily bad guys, just always loyal to the Iron Throne, hence allegiance with Tywin. Jamie Oath dilemma. Well, no, Walder has no oath to the Iron Throne. Walder was completely 100% loyal to Robb until Robb betrayed him. And Roose was always kind of keeping his options open until it became beneficial to him to switch sides. Both of them were opportunists. Which, is to be honest, I can't really blame them. Like, you know, in a situation of who do you follow, your lord versus your king, like they're kind of morally equivalent, right? Like, all things being equal, you have to start examining like who's the better person in these situations, or who will lead to the best outcome for humanity, or your, you know. And in these situations, like Walder and Roose are, well, Walder's thinking about his family. He's definitely thinking about his family. We don't know really what Roose is doing. Roose is fucking crazy. Um, but no, neither of them are always loyal to the Iron Throne. Both of them are opportunists in the story. That's just how it is. I mean, the Walder was very upset about being embarrassed about, you know, having his marriage. I mean, the phrase fully committed their forces and were winning wars for Robb until Robb betrayed them. Preston, how do you explain the werewood's capacity for accelerated petrification? So this is a mistranslation of what people are thinking about. Okay, so there's no petrified werewoods, unless you are thinking about Naga's bones. Naga's bones like come up, and some people think, oh, these big stone pillars are petrified werewoods. Maybe they could be anything. They could be bones. Maybe they're petrified werewoods. We don't know how old they are. Petrified werewoods petrified anything on the coast of an ocean would be a really weird location. That's not where things petrify, but we have no idea the age. So maybe werewoods petrified. Now, people bring up, there's a line where people start talking about the Raven Tree or werewood, and they say, oh, 1,000 years it was alive. Maybe in another 1,000 years it'll be stone. 1,000 years is metaphorical. In A Song of Ice and Fire, 1,000 years means 1,000,000 years. It means 100 years. The phrase means in a long time. It doesn't mean 1,000 years. Like, that's not what it means. And so people have taken that phrase, oh, it takes 2,000 years for a werewood to become petrified. No. Like, that's just like 1,000 years in A Song of Ice and Fire means a long time. It doesn't mean anything else. It can mean 100 years. It can mean 1,000,000 years. That's what it means. So there's no accelerated petrification in the story. That's just it's just a mistake people made. Can't say, but wanted to suggest, when you have editors on, is it possible to start by asking them about how they got into A Song of Ice and Fire, favorite character, etc. That's true. I should have done that. I forgot what we talked about Taylor last time, but yeah, definitely do that. Those are always some interesting stories. That is true. A Feast for Crows was a real mistake for George. It depends how you see it. I mean, at the same time, like, A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons are a mistake for George in the sense that it's really difficult to finish the story now that he's expanded it and made it so like complex. But at the same time, because it's been expanded and complex, we sit here and like debate and analyze it. So like at the same time, the theorizing community and like the people being super into the story wouldn't be there without those books. Because, you know, had he just had a sequel to Storm of Swords and rounded the story up and it finished up, and I think it would just be another fantasy story. But like A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons, as flawed as they are also like invent this huge, enormous, rich world that is beyond other fantasy stories. So it's double-edged sword. But yeah, it's just getting to the point where he can't finish. He can't close it. He can't bring the universe back onto itself. You know, it's sort of like the universe was expanding, you know, and it's exactly like the real universe, right? So anybody that studied like science, like the real universe was supposed to expand, and then gravity was supposed to bring it back in. Big bang, big crunch. But for some reason, as expanding, it started coming back, and then dark energy kicked in and started expanding it even further, and so now it's never coming back. And that's essentially what happened with A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, you know, the story expanded. You get to A Storm of Swords, it feels like it's coming back, and then A Feast for Crows, A Dance with Dragons happens. The dark energy. So there'll be no big crunch. If Targaryen blood is needed for dragon riding, and assume the story needs a rider for Dany's 3 dragons, which of Robert's bastards will ride? Only confirmed Targ blood left, other than Shireen. So there's so much like Targ blood floating around. This is like Jedi's, like all the Jedi's got killed off at the end of Revenge of the Sith, except for, and then give your unending list of like lost Jedi's, you know, Grogu, Ahsoka, you know, Luke, Leia, you know, all those people that were in the Anakin movie, the ministers or whatever. I mean, if Carmine were on, he could list honestly like 50 Jedis that survived. It's the same with Targaryen blood. There's so much Targaryen blood floating around, you know. I mean, the Targaryens married into the Hightower family at the end of the Dance with Dragons. You've got the House Plum and everything with that. You've got all the dragon seeds on Dragonstone and Driftmark. You know, it just goes on. It's also not the, you know, can skin changing from the north and the Blackwoods and the Brackens like do stuff as well. There's all sorts of random Targaryens floating around. You know, all the Blackfires, the Aryan Bright Flame's descendants, Sarah's descendants. Like, it just goes on and on. There's so many possible people that can be riding, that can have Targaryen blood in the story. But now, you know, might be like existing characters. Well, you know, all the Hightowers essentially. All, you know, or the Danes, or actually the Martells as well, you know, married into the Targaryens. So it's everybody. It's everybody. When will Dick Cole run into Hot Pie? That's a pretty funny one. That's a pretty funny one. That maybe that should happen. Maybe that should happen. Okay, let's see here. Night's Watch takes no part. Colors are connected with families. Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. Of course, Targaryen has the color black, but Black Bar, House Black Bar. But it's true. I think that's a pretty good explanation, actually. That they have no sigils and they have no banners. They're just black. You know, the same with the. I mean, it could be said of this Kingsguard as well. White. You're it's now painted over. Your past life is painted over, and now you have this new life. That's pretty good. That's pretty good explanation. It might even actually be in the story. In any Wildfire on the fanfic in Cersei or other point of view? Oh, Wildfire is definitely coming back. Wildfire is going to come back quite a bit. I mean, we have all the Wildfire that was left over from the Blackwater. We have King Aerys' last lost stashes. Wildfire is definitely coming back. I mean, I think fundamentally, you know, King's Landing has to get blown up, right? Let's see here. Edric Dane is Edric Storm. We've literally met both characters, and they look different. Spicy physics. Grogu is Howland Reed. Maybe. Fagon is Aegon. It'd be fun. So I'll talk about this a little bit when I do the going over the John chapter. But there's some I think there'd be a certain irony to the fact that to like everyone in the story thinking Aegon is fake and him actually being real after all would be amazing kind of idea. Why aren't women allowed on the Night's Watch? I think it's the reason is that it has to do with sacrificing babies to the others, and they didn't want any like children or something around. I think it's something like that. It would be my guess. But then again, I mean, women are not allowed in almost all of the orders in Westeros. They're not allowed with the Maesters. They're not allowed in the Kingsguard. So that's a pretty common thing on the one hand. But you could also say like, the punishment for Dany Flint is insane. Like that's insane. You could have just sent her home, like so. That makes it seem a little bit like it's more like, oh, how dare you. So maybe it has to do with like sacrificing babies and things like that. If Quaith shows up, will it be in person or a dream? In the fanfic, Dany's going to return to Qarth and she's going to talk to Quaith. So Daenerys too. In the next Daenerys chapter, she's going to be talking with Quaith in the fanfic plan. That's just like, and then who knows, what's going to happen to her after that, if she's going to live, if she's going to die, if she's going to continue on. But, INC's April Fool joke shows Mira and Nefenda made up a weird observation that Alaric Stark boned the good Queen Alysanne, and the baby 1 year later is only dark-haired Targ from silver-haired parents. That's funny. I don't know how Alysanne like is able to hide her pregnancy for like a good 9 months. I mean, it's funny. Obviously, it's supposed to be a joke, but that'll be a funny idea to somehow get Targaryen blood up there. But like I said, I just think that like people have telepathic abilities. They have telepathic abilities. Like it's not that big a deal. Let's see. Alaris is Dany Flint. I mean, obviously the parallel is there. Alaris being Dany Flint. Dany Flint is Dany California. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have Zaro, and we even touched on Quaith. Yes, yeah, we started out talking about Quaith. Man, oh man. But I think Zaro, like that's the great thing about going back to Qarth is that we get to explore so many different things. Daria is Tabhomat. It's a good theory. It's just that aren't they simultaneously in the story? Don't we meet Tabhomat like while Daria is with Dany in the Dothraki Sea? Glass Candle. Maybe they're related. Ossifer Plum is big, longer, and uncut. Theory of the Faceless Men in the story. I think that the Faceless Men are there thematically to represent nihilism, and that I think they're a device for Arya to go down. I don't necessarily think that like there was a grand world needs to die like Faceless Man conspiracy that like some people have, like, oh, the doom of the Valyria was done by the Faceless Men, and now they want to bring down the entire world. I don't know if George was really thinking about that, but the fact that he brought back Jaqen and Agar is a bit interesting. Um, but I kind of just think that, well, Jaqen and Agar has been hired to take out somebody north of the wall, like Bloodraven or somebody. But that's but that's um and then what do you think caused the year-long seasons in the book? I think so at some point, like time was fine. I mean, the seasons were fine, and then this person's like a song of clicking on YouTube. That's not that's my son making noise. Um, but the what caused the long seasons? It's I think it has. I mean, whether you think it's something scientific or something magical, like I think it's linked to the running and maintenance of the wall. Like, and so in the fanfic, we'll eventually be getting into that. But it's in the prologue. You can read the prologue and like try to figure it out. I want to spoil it exactly, but like, the Maester John figures something out. He hints on something, and so now if George just thinks that the wall is magical and it has something to do with that, it still ends up in the same place, that it's the magical creation or the magical maintenance of the wall, the scientific creation or the scientific maintenance of the wall has caused something to change with the rotation of the earth, and that once you get rid of the wall, you knock down the wall, the world goes back. They didn't have the wobble, they didn't have the uneven seasons before, and now they do. So why are both religious and scientific centers of thought in Old Town? Is George R. R. Martin saying religion equals science? Are the Sept and the Citadel more antagonistic than we think? Are most maesters atheists? No, I think when George invented these things, well, first off, like, I just want to say certain things don't make sense about the story. Okay, there's no reason that the largest city in Westeros would be on the Honeywine River, and that location of Westeros before King's Landing grew to be the largest, like Old Town. There's no reason that city like would be there in that location. It's all kind of silly that he just chose that location. Now, when he wants to have a religious scientific center, he's thinking, when he thinks about the Maesters, he's obviously thinking about these monks and knowledge and everything existing, like in our own world, even though he's now created septons that are like those old monks with Septon Barth. Like when he created the concept of Maesters, he's definitely thinking about Dune and things like that, and these advisors who are really running the show and stuff like that. And he was just creating something like that. Like when you think about the histories that were saved by these monks in these monasteries, and how they altered history, and all, like, that's what George is thinking about. And so when he originally connected the Maesters and the faith, he was just having one embodiment, that this was a large conspiracy. That when we look at our own history and we say, oh, well, how do we know that this and this happened? Well, we a lot of it we don't, because these histories were copied and changed and altered over time. And so, that's the situation. So I don't think that George R. R. Martin is saying that religion equals science, but I think he's saying that I think he's taking one concept that he had in his head, and then over time things have kind of evolved. But I mean, I think he's perhaps like hiding science behind, like, I mean, which is the regular world, right? Like, you know, when we couldn't explain why the sun went up and the sun came down, people just said it was a god in the sky, right? Like, I don't think it's any different than that. That like religion is what when you can't explain science, when science can't explain something, you invent a religious reason for it, right? You know, like we don't know what happens when we die. Well, religion has an answer. Well, okay. You know, we don't. They didn't know why the seasons happened. Well, it was God. You know, so I don't think there's any large statement being made there. Now, are the Maesters atheists? I don't think we have any evidence that Maesters are atheists either. I think they all seem to be, followers of the faith of the Seven. Now, there is one line I think in the Arion sample chapter where she talks about the weather of Dorn and how there's an argument between the Maester and a Septon, and about that. But I think that's a fairly new kind of concept. I don't know if George really separated them out in his head until relatively late in the story. So I just think, the High Towers run them all. It's a High Tower conspiracy is probably like George's just kind of like original concept. I just wanted to thank you. The last chapter of Wind's project was absolutely amazing. Thank you, Treyan. It was a lot of hard work, that one, but we got it out. The theology and science are intertwined in history. Prophecy is the reason Old Town is the biggest city, or some ancient migration. I don't think it's dumb. Well, I mean, I think when George R. R. Martin originally made that map, he things were different. So we kind of know from those early drafts that Royne was the arbor, and it was that island, and there was something special on that island. Hello.
I put on the helmet. Your favorite thing, the helmet.
Oh, because you think you're gonna echo? All right.
Oh no, because you flipped out from the. I have to give that to you.
I'll show this. Carmine's like a helmet today. But yes,
I have to give you that podcast, and don't fucking do that thing where you're like, oh, it's too late. No, it's not too late.
What do you
mean? Never too late.
What do you mean?
The main.
So Carmine and I, if we ever get the only tips that we get into is that Carmine and I will do podcasts, and then Carmine will be like, okay, great, we did that podcast, and then he's like, I'm gonna take like a 4-day vacation, and
I do not take. Stop it! You're ridiculous. That's so not true. You stop it right now.
And then I'm like, dude, what happened to that podcast? He's like, oh yeah, I'll get it to you soon. And then like 3 days later, he gets the podcast, and it's like we're talking about episode 3 of something, and episode 5 is out, and we're like, fuck.
Stop it! It's not. I got. You do this thing where he's like, "Well, it's too late. It's never too late. You stop it right now." By the way, did you see the short I uploaded?
Yeah, I did. I did watch it.
The short I uploaded today.
It was today. Now I gotta check your channel. Now I gotta check your channel because I know you saw. I know I watched something that was brief of yours recently. Yay! I watched the. Oh. It's on the. I got to go to the shorts tab. Oh, hello.
Yeah. By the way, shorts are. Are you gonna play it?
Let me see if it'll make sounds here. How basic and dumb is the Mandalorian religion that, oh, you bathed in the water? I guess you're one of us now. Like, no. Like, you still have to fundamentally believe the fundamental principles. So in Islam, you're forgiven of all your sins if you do an Umrah or a Hajj. Or in Catholicism, you are forgiven of all your sins if you confess them to a priest. However, can you hear all that when I play it?
Yes, I can hear.
Oh, okay. You still need to fucking believe in God, like in order to. Like, I ruined the rhythm of that. Like, hold on a second. Be part of the religion, right? Bo-Katan doesn't accept or believe any of their tenets, so she cannot be one of them. Like, oh, you bathed in your water? I guess you're one of us now because you haven't taken off your helmet. Really? Like, that's the only aspect of your whole fucking religion is taking off your helmet? That's the beginning and the end of your religion is helmet. Is there like a reason? Is that to honor a god? Like, it doesn't matter. I just can't fucking take off the helmet.
I would love it if their god was just one giant helmet. It's not even a person, it's just a helmet.
How basic and dumb is the Mandalorian? That's part of the rant. It goes on for another 2 hours.
No, I love it. Like, wait till you guys hear it. It's. I even put in. Have you ever seen SpongeBob? Like, you might be too old for SpongeBob.
No, I've
SpongeBob
seen
had these
more,
transitions. Okay, well, you've probably seen the transitions where it's like 20 minutes later. I put one like that in there while you were ranting about the fucking religion again, because you go on like uninterrupted for a good 10 minutes, and I just let you go.
Yeah, it's true. Real quick, I was gonna say, do you think Bran will see alt timelines? Maybe Doran goes to King's Landing instead of Oberyn and then dies fighting the Mountain in a trial by combat. I do think that Bran has been seeing alt timelines, will see alt timelines. I think, Dany saw alt timelines at the House of the Undying. I think Bran is going to get alt timelines to understand like what his situation is at some point. We're certainly going to do that in the fanfic, and I think it's what would happen in the Winds of Winter. That, when he goes and he sees when he goes and he finally sees the spikes of all those dead, he saw the dead dreamers in his dream, so he's seen the alt timelines. He's seen himself die. So I think that's definitely.
Oh, before you move on to the next thing, stop spoiling the fanfic. Stop telling us what Dany's gonna do in Dany 2. Like, I didn't know she was gonna go see Quaith and Qarth. I didn't know that. Don't spoil it. Come on.
I know. People ask these questions. I overly share. If peak Leslie Nielsen were in House of the Dragon, who would he be? Leslie Nielsen was a dramatic actor before he became a comedic actor, and the reason he was so funny in Airplane is that everything he'd done before was so serious. It'd be very fitting that Leslie Nielsen would. I mean, if he were not dead, considering that Leslie Nielsen is the star of George R. R. Martin's favorite movie, but Forbidden Planet. But yeah, Leslie Nielsen would be like. I mean, he'd just fit in as a maester, right? Like a goofy maester. I can't think of anybody else that's like old that's hanging out. I'm Preston Pill, just finished first read. Now I'm worried I won't have time to get all my theories posted before Winds of Winter hits. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of time before any Winds of Winter hits. Man, there's so many. George's Winds of Winter is not hitting anytime soon. Ours is not getting completed anytime soon. Winds of Winter is just going to be lingering and lingering. But yeah. That's the world. That's the world. When are we gonna get tired of this? I don't know. It's funny.
Did you talk about the thing I said to you before you started the stream about how because someone in my server made a very good point. They go, this battle's going very well according to plan.
No, I didn't mention that. That's a very good point. So there is something that I sort of say, George's writing style is that he kind of invents an announced plan, and then it never goes according to plan, right? That's he establishes expectations, and then he subverts them. And so it's a little unusual that Jon's battle on the field went according to plan. And even what went on inside Storm's End, even though there was a few hiccups, for the most part went according to plan, or at least according to one of their contingencies. And that's true. And so it was kind of set up in a sense in the fanfic to be more like hints of what's going to happen. Like you're not sure of Jon's full plan. And so you're given hints and pieces here and there. And like, rather than it be, this is the plan and then it happened. Like Mandalorian, you know, like I'm going to go bathe in the battles of the waters of Mandalore. Next episode, I've bathed in the waters of Mandalore. Like it's nothing. There's nothing interrupts things, right? So the whole way it was written was that the whole plan wasn't exactly announced. We got hints and elements. You got hints of the beasts. You got hints of the burning torches. You got hints of the maester chain and things like this. And then at the end you can maybe put your pieces together and see how the whole thing happened. But so it was written a little different. But yes, it was not exactly George's style. I mean, George would probably explain less, or like have things explained many chapters later. Like Jon's flashback to like all of his planning would be in Jon 4 rather than Jon 2, you know, things like that. But I think at this point it's just like there's so many mysteries and there's so many things that need to be explained that I just don't want to wait explaining things, because like we have to wrap things up. We can't be like George, you know. So can't be like George. So how's it going, Carmine? How's it going?
It's going fine. If I was George, I would be like over the moon that I really wouldn't have to explain anything, because like 52 random YouTubers like will just do it for me, you know, eventually. So
right, like with Star Wars, like somebody will write an expanded universe book on that plot hole, you know.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So how many I brought this up earlier, but you weren't on. But how many Jedis survive the purge?
Like what, 100 something plus maybe? Maybe. Well, that depends if you're talking about like the old EU versus like the new canon. The new canon, like quite a few. It's like probably less than 50, but in the old expanded universe, like over 100 guys probably survived. And,
okay. But you know, for being like, you know, for Luke being the last Jedi, or like the in Return of the Jedi, when we say the Jedi, you know, it's like as if he's the only one, or Yoda say, or like Ben and Yoda saying like, oh, he's our last hope, and he says no, there is another, like implying that there's just Luke and Leia, like, and you know, in the end you're like, no, actually there's Ahsoka and there's Grogu and there's all of the what were they called first, the people that were in the Obi-Wan movie, the Obi-Wan series.
What do you mean? What were they called first?
The first, second, the third. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, the Inquisitors.
Inquisitors. Yeah.
What is that, by the way? What is going on?
It's my toddler. My toddler trying to get me. Yeah.
By the way, like I'm a little annoyed that I was gonna get you a gift, but fucking Twitter, I was gonna get you Twitter Blue, and I was gonna rag on you by saying, Preston, how could you get Twitter Blue? Like Elon's a douche. Why are you supporting him? But Twitter Blue doesn't allow gift giving. Like you can't gift someone Twitter Blue. The fuck?
I mean, he's going out of his way to like sync Twitter. Like no one's like now, like if he gets rid of legacy blue check marks, like what's the point of having a blue check mark? You know?
It's to cut down on all the bots, and I kind of get it. It's that mentality of if you've ever seen Invincible, once everyone's super, no one will be. Like I get it, And we do have you have a problem in your comment section. Same here. And live stream, we haven't seen them, but they were all over the live stream chat back during House of the Dragon. The sex bots,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
it's kind of a problem. You want to read that the new super chat, and I'll get into it because CGP Grey kind of fixes that.
False chronology comes from the Winterfell crypts. Statues misrepresented lords' reigns added up to 8,000 years. Oldest, several all lived at the same time. BTB, just a guy. That is an interesting idea. Now I'm taking like, so if you add up all of the people's like ages and everything in the Bible, you get to the Earth being like 6,000 years old, right? But it's of course like ridiculous that you could even add up these peoples because like some of them are living hundreds of years. And so that's an interesting idea that the Maesters are actually basing their history on the Stark statues, that the Stark statues are like the oldest relics they have to estimate when the Long Night was and the building of the wall, that actually they're off by thousands of years. It's certainly possible. Like where do they get the 8,000 year number from? Like how are they even coming up with that? And you just have being the Winterfell crypts as your only evidence, and that things are a lot younger. I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know if it would have too much of an impact on the story. Like, say you found out that the Long Night happened 4,000 years ago, and the Andal at the same time as the Andal invasion or something. Doesn't change much, you know. So it's certainly an interesting idea. It's probably accurate to some degree. You know, that how exactly are they determining like ages of things? You know, and the Winterfell crypts have to be it, right? But then like why do the Ironborn have iron and all these things that don't fit? Why are they using iron swords if they're supposed to be using bronze to lock people in the crypts? And why is the Andal king part of like the Rat Cook story and all sorts of weird stuff? But it's but yeah, it does make sense. I do want like just the Stark lineage is completely wrong. I always thought 8,000 years sounded wrong. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll have to think about that more. That's an interesting concept to throw into the fanfic. They've got carbon dating. Yeah, carbon dating. Yeah. Because they don't really do very good art. They don't do standard archaeology and things like that. Determining age. Stark Targaryens are the Roynish. Well, it depends what we mean by Roynish. Do we mean like the little island outside of Old Town, Royne? The Arbor. The Arbor was really Royne. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just find that, with the exception of Trey, like most of the people that I follow on Twitter have been tweeting less. You know, this is anecdotal,
well, to be
obviously.
Fair, who do you follow? What's your Twitter again? Sweet Robin 47,000. What is it? Like something.
Yeah, Sweet Robin 9,000.
There you are. Well, first off, you follow like 11 guys. I barely tweet. I don't think Yoisten tweets that much. Man carrying things, I don't know how much he tweets. Dragon Demands, I don't know if you have him on mute. I have to have him on mute because he like tweets everything on the planet. Like, well, no, he tweets everything on the planet. He uses.
That's the thing. Like some Twitter people like want to be like want the stuff like right now. They want the news now. You know.
I mean, I guess if he just tweeted like Ice and Fire, House of the Dragon news, fine. But he like retweets like all his like favorite YouTubers and stuff, which I don't care about. Like Glidus, I don't think he tweets that much. Half an Onion, do they tweet that much? You're not really following many people.
No.
And I don't tweet that much, so.
Yeah. I don't. it's just I'm a bad tweeter. It's
Same here.
I don't know. It just doesn't. Well, we will see. We'll see. I mean, I use Twitter to announce stuff, I guess, but it's hard to imagine the thing surviving if I don't know. There's no reason to go on. If you're just getting spammed by people with blue check marks. Let's see here. I gotta go pretty soon. I've been on here. I guess I've been on 2 hours, but it's my kid has been off the wall. Favorite Kubrick film? Mine was originally Clockwork Orange or 2001. Now it's Barry Lyndon. Love the idea of vengeance consuming someone. I've never seen Barry Lyndon. I'm trying to think of all the Kubrick films I've seen. Let's see. Of all the ones I've seen. I've seen Eyes Wide Shut. I've seen Full Metal Jacket. I've seen Shining. I've seen Clockwork Orange. I've seen 2001. I've seen Doctor Strangelove. And I've never seen Lolita or Barry Lyndon. I think the first half of Full Metal Jacket is really incredible, but how do you count half a movie, right? I still think 2001 is really great.
Really, not The Shining?
I think The Shining is really, really good. I think Shining's really, really well paced. It's a really good movie. Shelley Duvall is really excellent in that movie. She apparently went through horror. Poor woman went through absolute horror in that movie. Because the Kubrick was like, in order to get her to act, she needs to really be scared. Like, oh my God! Like, they brutalized her. They absolutely brutalized her.
You know, the last film he was ever like somewhat involved with was that movie with Haley Joel Osment, AI, Artificial Intelligence by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I saw that one. That was a crap movie. I saw that in the theaters. It was long. It was really long. But I can go to a whole rant on why I hate AI as a movie. It's just true. But it's not really worth getting into because it's like such a forgotten movie because it was like not great, you know. So everybody's like, "Oh, just forget about it." So, Space from Bottom Up, Twice the History of Egypt. That's the fun. So, see, now I'm thinking like how much I'm thinking about the fanfic and how much of like crazy history we can cram in and how everything's off, like Karth's walls being all messed up and the history of everything like not really explaining things well, but the Jack Nicholson's most iconic role. When I think of Jack Nicholson's most iconic role, I think of As Good as It Gets. And
that's a good one.
Little Shop of Horrors. I'm trying to think of like some really random Jack Nicholson roles. Witches of Eastwick.
What's that one where what's the Jack Nicholson where he it's in the trailer for the movie, they spoil it, but what's the one where he says where the woman comes to him and he's a writer and she goes,
"That's as
How
good
do
as
you
it
write
gets."
women's...
Yeah.
Oh, I love that scene. Oh my God. For the audience who doesn't know, it's in the movie, a woman who's a fan of his comes up to him and says, "How do you write women so well?" And he goes, "I think of a man and I take away all reason and accountability." Oh.
Now, if you actually like see the movie, he's like mentally disturbed and like
Yeah, he's
like,
an asshole. Yeah.
No, he's not just an asshole. Like he has like mental problems, and at the end of the movie, he starts taking his meds. Like, and so it's odd because it's like it's presented in the trailer like this is a guy that just is a straight shooter, can't hold him back. What he's awesome. He's like House, you know. And then in the movie, it's like no, he like has, you know, he needs to be on medication, and at the end of the movie, he decides to go on the medication. So it's a little funny in that sense, like. oh yeah, he's shooting him down, owned. It's like, no, he's like he's got mental problems, you know.
It's one of those films that if you watch it now and you look back at it, like the way they treat gays, like because he has a gay neighbor, and the way he treats like his gay neighbor is like, oh, it's not you couldn't do that today. It's one of those things where you can't do today.
No, and the fact that he like comes around to being like somewhat nice to the guy at the end, yeah, it's Tinfoil. It's all just a board game with edges, and that's why no one has gone off north, south, east, or west. The first book is just called Game. Oh, it's like 13th Floor. They find out they're like in a simulation, and it's like this is one big board game. But things disappear over the horizon, though, so it's got to at least be like lump. It's got to at least like be like a semicircle or something, or something.
What's that movie? 13th Floor?
Yeah, you ever seen 13th Floor?
So you have actually, I've actually checked out two things. One thing that you recommended. So in the last live stream, you recommended the movie Cube, I think, which I downloaded. I'm gonna watch it, but I've actually just finished yesterday that episode of Deep Space Nine you told me to check out. Children of
when you said yesterday, I was like, the Beatles movie. I was like, okay.
No. Also, yeah, and I'm not gonna check out 13th Floor now. You kind of fucking ruined it, but no, I have Cube,
I did,
and
I
just finished that Deep Space. Very good episode. God damn, very good episode. They were all gonna stay back in time. Are you guys for real right
now? They were all gonna live on. No, they were all gonna. Yeah, stay back in time. Yeah, go back in time and stay back in time. Yeah,
Jesus,
and live out. Like marry the people they're supposed to marry, have the kids they're supposed to because it's weird because like Miles O'Brien is like he's married at the time and he finds out that like he remarries and has children with like some other person and he's like, what? I'm gonna like and like the thought like really he never thought he would remarry but like
here we go. Oh my god.
But yeah, it weirds him out that he's like all of a sudden he's like looking at this person and he's like
and then it just takes them doing like a little gardening trip to be like, you know what, I guess we could stay here. But what about the Dominion? Like what are you guys saying? Like what? I don't know how I missed this episode, but
it's a great movie by itself. It makes no sense in the arc. Like there's some really important, they have really like super important roles to play in the current, like imagine what would happen to the Dominion War. Imagine what would happen to Deep Space Nine. If they just all went disappearing, like they just all vanished at that time. Like, come on. No. Plus I think like Jake is not with them, right?
No, Jake is not there.
So like Sisko would be abandoning his son. Like all sorts of stuff, like, you know, that you're just like, no, I don't
like Gul Dukat is out there being a crazy asshole. The changelings are out there being insane, and you guys are just gonna give all of that up. Kira is completely okay, and you know what? I'm gonna be that asshole that says like, look, these are my people. I don't know you guys. Fuck all you 8,000 people. Would I condemn you all to death just to save my person? Yes, I personally would. Like, I don't know you people.
Yeah.
It doesn't like. You're not really dying a gruesome death.
Yeah, but these are morally superior people that like think about like, you know, the benefit of the old and John 2 is really good, Sweet Robin, awesome job. Seriously, feels like George R. R. Martin wrote it himself. Thank you. It was a really hard one to write and put together and edit and everything, and everybody put in a lot of work, and it was.
By the way. So this was a battle. Did you actually draw out, like on paint or whatever you have, like an actual battle plans?
Like it's not that complicated. Like I never drew it out, but like it's not that complicated. Like if I drew a map, like there was some confusion, and like for a moment I like was gonna draw it, and then like my Apple Pencil was out of batteries, and I never did, and like I was like gonna draw it out and like send it to somebody. But
if you're gonna go over the chapter, can you please? Would it be okay if you drew it out? Because if you go on the Song of Ice and Fire wiki, Jaime's siege of Riverrun, people actually drew out like where he's stationed, where the siege engine, like people actually did draw it out. Like if you could, that'd be great. If not,
I'll draw it out, and it's it's not that complicated. It really isn't, but it's I suppose like all of the little hints of everything and all the pieces, because I think some people are still confused at the end, like what exactly happened, like what was going on with the oxen and the cows and the donkeys, and where are they on the hill, and which way are they facing, and where are the elephants coming from. So I'll do that when I do the go over. Cube movies are great. I don't think actually like any of the movies are great, but I think the original Cube has a really interesting concept, and I actually kind of think the sequels ruin the Cube franchise, but I guess I like the first Cube. I think I like the concept more than I like the execution. Like I think they sort of get at it. Carmine hasn't watched it yet, but like I like the concept of the teamwork, that they were supposed to have everybody together solve it, and that they kind of needed to like realize that in the end. But it gets the sequels, like they get all convoluted with like whatever corporation owns the cube and things like that. They get away from like what the cube represents. Like the cube is supposed to represent like human beings on Earth, and how we treat each other. And I think like that's like the key to like what the interesting concept that makes the movie work is the fact that like it's like a zombie movie. It's about the human beings. It's not really about the cube. It's about the people, right?
But isn't that every like 80s and 90s movie? The sequel always ruins it. Like RoboCop. The first one is amazing, but everything else trash.
Yeah, that's true. Would you rather be a king 1,000 years ago or middle class now? A disturbing number of people pick king, losing all modern comforts. Oh, I'd definitely pick middle class now. I mean, just the medical care and everything. I mean, the stuff that you just couldn't. Like, I don't think people really understand like what people had back then. Like, you're a king 1,000 years ago. Like, your food, all food is going to taste like shit. Like, it's just like there's no spices. Spices are really hard to get. Sugar is really hard to get. If you get sick, if you need to go to the dentist, like you're done. Like, just of course I would pick middle class today. Like, oh my god, just ridiculous concept. Like, I don't even know if I would pick, like, even if you were to be like billionaire 50 years ago versus like middle class today, I think I'd still pick like middle class today, like even when I'm going that, This is really funny. I figured out the grandfather paradox. I killed my grandfather and I'm still alive. I just skipped the time travel part. That's a pretty funny joke. That's pretty funny. All right, I'm gonna do these last couple super chats and then I gotta get going. Love John 2 with Blackfire appearing. Thoughts on Longclaw is Dark Sister and will play in John's Resurrection, likely Ghost and Funeral Pyre. By the way, there's going to be a lot more with the gifts of the three treasures of Bittersteel, and that Shamfron and that saddle and all sorts of things. Like, you are going to get into that. So, but it's like I don't want to spoil shit. It's like I like came up with some really good ideas, and I'm like, oh fuck, yes, I'm gonna do this and this and this. But there's gonna be a lot of fun, a lot of fun. I can't actually wait to get back to the next John Con chapter, and because there's so much fun that's gonna be had there with talking about Bittersteel's Bittersteel's gifts or Bittersteel's treasures. With Blackfire appearing, thoughts on Longclaw's Dark Sister or play out in Jon's resurrection. Likely Ghost Funeral Pyre. I don't think Longclaw is Dark Sister. I think people say that Longclaw is Dark Sister only because they're both bastard swords or whatever. I think that Dark Sister is in the cave with Bran somewhere. And I think that's pretty kind of cool, neat idea. That Dark Sister is gonna come back in that sense. I mean, I guess Hodor is gonna be maybe wielding it. I don't know, So we'll see how it goes. So, but it's like, how do you get Dark Sister out of there? If Bitter, I mean, because we know Bloodraven took it to the wall. But what happened to it after that? Well, probably, and it can't just be Mormont's sword, because Mormont had that had Longclaw on Bear Island. So I think it's in the cave, and it's got to play a role somehow. So I think we're gonna bring it back. Werewolves are keeping feudalism a thing to keep blood in the soil. I think something like that, metaphorically speaking, at least. I mean, I don't think they're like into feudalism specifically, but I think there's something when you read "And Seven Times Never Kill Man" about what the pyramids were doing to the planet, like keeping it in balance, keeping the intelligent organisms stupid, having them kill themselves off, having them not breed that much, keeping the planet in balance. There's something going on as well where it's like it's keeping humanity down, fighting with itself, keeping its populations low for a reason. That kind of idea. Yeah, I think that's definitely like part of it. Like that they're in this technological regression for 8,000 years or more intentionally because of the werewoods. Can you search my post above and watch the clip quickly, please? Am I looping? Or okay, all right, Kirsty.
I think it's something to do with the Blu-ray's history and lore for the Night's Watch. I don't.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what she was talking about.
Huh. That's interesting. Hold on a second. So it's she's spotted Hodor in a histories and lore, the Night's Watch. Okay, this is at 15:15. Oh gosh.
What is it? Porn?
No. I mean, so there's this art drawing of people in the Night's Watch, and then one of the Black brothers completely looks like the Hodor actor, and the way the shadows are, it makes it look like he's carrying Bran on his back. Now I think it's completely a coincidence, but it's kind of hilarious. Let me here, I'm gonna take a picture. I'll put it up on screen. Hold on. This is funny. There it is.
Now, I have never seen the Game of Thrones Histories and Lore Blu-rays before. Like, what is going on with this?
Yeah,
what is
this?
I
don't know. I mean, it's like the Histories and Lores things that you would post all the time. What are you talking about? Are you making a joke right now?
Oh, you mean the epic history and lore that I was inspired by Comic Book Girl 19? I used to do those. I gotta do more of those.
Right. Yes. Of course. You've never seen any of them. Anyway, that was kind of funny. That was weird. Huh? Or Rick and his dark sister. Huh. All right, guys. I will talk to you guys next time. Thank you all for being here. Any last things, Carmine?
No.
Okay. All right.
Other than Quaith is the reason she keeps her mask on is probably because she's a part of the Mandalorian cult and she doesn't want to have to take it off and go bathe in some waters because that is a thing that they have to do.
Yeah, she keeps the mask on because she's either too hot or too busted. One of the two. we don't know which. Or radiation. It's like a welder mask, or it's religious, or all of them at once. We'll have to figure it out. All right, thanks guys. I'll talk to you guys later.